You're sitting across from them. You nod at the exact right moment. You flawlessly match the pitch of their voice, mirror their posture, and validate their mundane opinions. They think you're incredibly charming. You quietly pride yourself on having elite emotional intelligence. You are lying to yourself. This is not empathy. This is a brutal cognitive assassination. When the door finally closes, the facade shatters. You collapse onto the couch. You feel completely hollowed out. You cannot form a single complex thought for the rest of the night. You quickly label yourself as a fragile introvert with a defective social battery. Stop misdiagnosing your exhaustion. You're not suffering from an introverted personality. You are actively running the most expensive, destructive software available to the human mind. The corporate world heavily praises your social adaptability. They are dangerously wrong. What if your perfect ability to blend in is not a valuable soft skill, but an agonizingly toxic cloaking device? What if this subconscious habit of masking your high intelligence is the exact reason your raw cognitive engine is burning to ash? The modern professional landscape has constructed a highly lucrative mythology around social flexibility. They aggressively indoctrinated you with the corporate gospel of emotional intelligence. They demanded that you adopt the chameleon protocol. They told you to fake it until you make it, to meticulously read the room, to actively suppress your intense analytical frequency, and to seamlessly blend into the comforting mediocrity of the crowd. You deeply internalize this oppressive rulebook. You diligently observe the facial microexpressions of your colleagues. You carefully modulate the sharpness of your vocabulary. You constantly bite your tongue when someone presents a fundamentally flawed argument, forcing yourself to emit a warm, agreeable laugh instead. You watch the effortlessly integrated extroverts around you, and you quietly judge yourself as a fragile, socially inadequate introvert whose battery drains far too quickly. Stop accepting this toxic psychological diagnosis. Your profound inability to endure long social gatherings has absolutely nothing to do with introversion or a lack of personal stamina. The mainstream networking gurus treat social masking as a harmless, highly desirable, soft skill that everyone must master. They are catastrophically incorrect. When you aggressively alter your natural baseline to match the shallow frequency of the room, you're not exercising genuine empathy. You're committing an act of brutal cognitive self-mutilation. Masking is not a sophisticated communication strategy. It is a highly taxing, hyper-vigilant trauma response forged by years of being penalized by the herd for your raw intellect. Your brain does not understand the abstract concept of corporate networking or polite dinner conversation. It only understands the severe physiological penalty of running a massive, continuous deception program. The society that continuously praises your approachability is a society optimized for comfortable illusions, not for authentic intellectual friction. They want you highly digestible. Your biology is screaming under the immense pressure of the disguise. Every single time you artificially mirror a smile or deliberately suppress a complex thought to avoid intimidating the group, you are violently attacking your own neural architecture. Throw away the shallow extrovert and introvert personality labels entirely. Erase the toxic concept of a fragile social battery from your identity. You must claim your absolute immunity from this artificial social guilt right now. You are not a weak, antisocial individual struggling to keep up with normal human interaction. You're a highly advanced cognitive entity suffering from a devastating systemic overload. But to truly understand why a simple casual dinner party leaves you completely hollowed out, we must strip away all the behavioral psychology and the corporate etiquette guides. We must bypass your conscious self-loathing completely. Put down the crushing burden of trying to be a likable, highly agreeable human being. Pay very close attention to the deep, aching pressure throbbing behind your eyes at this exact quiet second. We are going to look directly into the microscopic computational centers of your cerebral cortex. A terrifyingly expensive, invisible dual processing operation is secretly destroying your neurological bandwidth. Drop the illusion of social exhaustion. Your conscious mind is entirely helpless in this neurological hostage situation. A ruthless computational war is silently raging beneath your skull. Let us zoom directly into the microscopic architecture of your cerebral cortex. In the late 1990s, Neuroscientists at the University of Parma mapped the primate brain and uncovered a terrifying biological reality about empathy. They discovered the mirror neuron system. This is not a mechanism for polite kindness. It is a highly aggressive, deeply entrenched neural radar designed to perfectly mimic external behavior. When you enter a social gathering, your brain does not relax. It initiates a brutal dual OS conflict. You are forcing your biological hardware to run two massively expensive operating systems at the exact same microsecond. System 1 actively suppresses your natural frequency. It violently chokes your high-speed analytical thoughts. It burns astronomical amounts of glucose just to keep your mouth shut. System 2 simultaneously hijacks the mirror neuron system. It relentlessly calculates the exact pitch of your coworker's voice. It measures the precise angle of their posture. It forces your facial muscles into a perfectly synchronized artificial smile. This is not communication. This is a devastating, high-voltage computational crisis. Look closely at the neurochemical scanner. As you desperately maintain this flawless social camouflage, your prefrontal cortex is suffocating. The oxygen levels plummet. The electrical impulses violently misfire across the synapses. Your deep processing centers are starved of metabolic fuel. A massive wave of neural fatigue floods your fragile bloodstream. Your physical body is physically shutting down to prevent a total neurological meltdown. Your nervous system literally cannot sustain the colossal energy drain of running a real-time, high-fidelity human simulation. Every single time you run this dark, exhausting masking program, you are blindly exploiting your brain's processing limits. You are actively starving your core intelligence. You are carving deep, permanent physical exhaustion into your gray matter. This is your ultimate biological alibi. You are not a fragile introvert. You are not psychologically broken. You are a highly advanced cognitive organism running a brutal, calorie-burning optical cloaking device. Your brain is forcefully rerouting premium cognitive fuel to run a flawlessly synchronized social avatar so that you absolutely do not trigger the group's defense mechanisms. It is an evolutionary masterpiece of proactive camouflage. It ruthlessly sacrifices your temporary mental clarity to guarantee your immediate social survival. The crippling cognitive paralysis you feel afterward is entirely real. You just survived a devastating computational firefight without moving an inch. But a chilling question remains. Why is this elite mirroring system firing blindly at harmless dinner parties? Why does the camouflage engine completely redline in the absolute safety of a modern corporate office? To understand this fatal mechanical glitch, we must look far beyond the mirror neurons in your head. We must abandon the modern social setting entirely. We must rewind the biological clock backward across the unforgiving food chain. The terrifying answer is not hiding in your networking skills. It is buried deep within the bloody, brutal camouflage algorithms of the natural world. Let us violently tear your perspective away from the polite smiles of the modern conference room. We must hurl your consciousness backward across millions of years of ruthless biological warfare. Welcome to the unforgiving depths of the primordial food chain. In this brutal natural kingdom, camouflage is never a casual behavior. It is a desperate, life or death biological emergency. Look at the apex masters of disguise. When an octopus or a chameleon alters its physical output to blend into the environment, it is not trying to be polite. It is desperately attempting to avoid being slaughtered by a larger predator. This morphological mirroring requires a terrifying surge of metabolic energy. The creature forces its nervous system to calculate the exact texture, color, and frequency of its surroundings in real time. But here's the critical evolutionary law. This cloaking device is only designed to be activated for a few frantic minutes. Once the lethal threat passes, the creature immediately drops the camouflage and returns to its baseline, because sustaining that disguise would literally drain its life force. But here lies the devastating biological mismatch. We took this extreme, calorie-burning survival protocol and we mercilessly dragged it into the sterile, fluorescent-lit corridors of the 21st century. Over the last few centuries, the modern corporate empire created an artificial environment where extreme cognitive conformity is demanded constantly. Your high-processing brain intuitively recognizes that your raw, unfiltered intellect makes the average herd deeply uncomfortable. To your primitive survival radar, this social discomfort registers as a lethal threat, so your brain violently pulls the emergency lever. It deploys the camouflage, but instead of running this cloaking device for a 3-minute predator evasion, society demands that you maintain this flawless psychological disguise for 8 grueling hours a day. Your DNA has absolutely no comprehension of a harmless water cooler conversation or a mandatory networking event. When you step into that room, your biological architecture assumes you are surrounded by apex predators waiting to tear you apart if you stand out. You are not a defective, socially anxious failure, struggling with basic human interaction. You are a biological anomaly suffering from a massive systemic collision. You're bringing the emergency cloaking mechanism of the deep ocean into a humiliating marathon against a meaningless social calendar. You're being aggressively punished by a mediocre society simply because your neural architecture refuses to let you drop the shield. It is an evolutionary slaughter disguised as professional adaptability. You were genetically programmed to blend in only to survive an immediate slaughter. And the modern social empire has brilliantly weaponized that exact survival instinct to drain your intellectual bandwidth. They engineered a psychological prison of approachability, and they boldly convinced you that your deep cognitive exhaustion is a shameful introvert disease. But the ancient predators are gone. The primordial oceans have vanished into the fossil record. The biological history has served its grand purpose to completely absolve your guilt. Yet understanding this evolutionary tragedy does not automatically restore the raw processing power you lost today. So, take a slow and deliberate breath. Let the overwhelming roar of the natural food chain completely fade into the background. We must put down the grand narratives of biological camouflage. Bring your heavy awareness back into this exact, quiet room. Look at the empty couch resting silently in front of you. The paralyzing numbness in your skull is no longer a physiological mystery, but we are standing at the absolute boundary of what ecological data can do for you. Because right here, in this suffocating stillness, a much deeper and far more radical reckoning awaits. Listen to the absolute stillness of this room. The grand narratives of evolutionary biology and the harsh mathematics of your mirror neurons have finally finished their testimonies. Drop the exhausting armor of trying to be a universally digestible human being. You have spent your entire adult life treating your unfiltered intellect as a social liability that needs to be cloaked. You fought a phantom war against your own frequency, constantly dimming your immense capacity to make the fragile crowd feel comfortable. But the endless pursuit of perfectly synchronized, artificially warm communication is a toxic illusion. A mind that never drops its camouflage to defend its boundaries is a mind that has surrendered its capacity to process the profound truths of the universe. The paralyzing hollowness your brain generates after a simple conversation is not a symptom of personal decay. It is the blazing spark of a highly sophisticated instrument begging to be unplugged from a meaningless social grid. Do not fear the imposing architecture of your own isolated shadows. Here is your ultimate existential amnesty. Your ancient biology violently forces you to mirror the herd, but you no longer have to remain an apologetic prisoner of approachability. You are the sole conscious architect of this magnificent neural machine. Instead of desperately trying to calculate the perfect facial expression to avoid social friction, you can deliberately choose to accept the cost of your authentic coldness. This is the hidden switch of absolute human resilience. When the agonizing urge to fake a smile begins tomorrow, do not run away in shame. Do not medicate your raw nature with shallow validation. Grant yourself the ultimate resignation from agreeableness. Let the camouflage fall. Watch the social friction unfold in your life with cold precision. Let the awkward silences play out without forcing a single synchronized gesture. You are safely anchored in your room while your brain conducts the most intense act of self-preservation available to mankind. You are proactively hoarding vital cognitive bandwidth for thoughts that demand your brilliance. By willingly occupying the center of this disconnect, you are stripping the tribal judgment of its paralyzing power. You are alchemically transforming chronic social burnout into an elite psychological armory. The painful alienation you feel in your chest is merely the sharpening of your cognitive blade against the whetstone of modern mediocrity. You survive the misunderstanding of the crowd 1,000 times in the dark, so that when a true intellectual problem strikes, you are absolute stone. The genetic code has given you the ultimate optical disguise, but the machine has no moral compass. It will entirely erase who you are if left unmanaged in the void. To bypass this, you must intentionally refuse to mirror frequencies that do not serve your core processing. The only element standing between being a helpless victim of your mirror neurons and becoming a supreme master of your cognitive fortress is the quiet intervention of your free will. Biology built the cloaking device, but your conscious will must decide when the power is cut. The power to override the social guilt is sitting right in front of you. Will you finally claim the heavy controls of your true identity, or will you let the shadow of the disguise drive you blindly into exhaustion? You have powered down the cloaking device. The exhausting camouflage is gone, and your cognitive bandwidth is finally yours again. But do not confuse a lowered shield with absolute intellectual victory. Retaining your energy is entirely useless if the unmasked reality secretly triggers a far more destructive internal algorithm. While you mastered the courage to stop mirroring the crowd, a much darker mechanical error has been quietly waiting for your vulnerability. When you remove the social filter and speak your raw truth, you will inevitably misstep. You will make a minor social error, and that is when the real nightmare begins. You're standing at a critical biological crossroads. Will you continue to run the exhausting dual operating system to please the herd, or will you accept the isolating friction of your authentic frequency? Claim your stance, commit to your choice in the comments below. Let the permanent record show whether you choose the terrifying truth of your intellect or the comfortable exhaustion of the disguise. Dropping the mask is only the first step. To operate this raw cognitive machine, you must face the horrifying consequence of your unshielded missteps. When that minor error happens, your high-processing brain transforms into a nocturnal torture chamber. It relentlessly replays that exact embarrassing conversation thousands of times at 2 in the morning. There's a brutal evolutionary reason why your intellect traps you in this agonizing mental echo death loop. We will dissect that exact mechanical flaw and the bizarre neurological fix to stop it instantly in the next video. But the question remains, how do you override this internal playback and finally cure the mental echo?